Okay, I'm going to call this regular board meeting for Thursday, August 15th, 2024 to order. And we will first start with Mr. Kelly is going to introduce Mason Garst for our Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes. Hey, thank you. I'm Trail Kelly. I'm the principal at Pleasant Grove Elementary. Mason, if you want to come on up here, we're going to ask you guys to stand and join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mason, can I have you step up front here too? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, up next I have the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Madam President, I move that we adopt the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Alexander. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 4-0 currently. And we are going to do the execution of the qualifying oath of office for our newly appointed board members. So Jane, if you'll join me out front. All right, up next we have Mr. Kelly to come up and talk about Pleasant Grove Elementary School.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for this opportunity. At Pleasant Grove, we take pride in our climate and culture, and we have great people that do a great service, and we have amazing students. First, I'd like to invite up is Dana Thompson. Dana, if you could come up. So Dana is our E&L teacher at Pleasant Grove. Our E&L population has just gone through the roof. 3 years ago, or this is her third year, so it had been 2 years ago, I hired her. She lived nearby. Her kids went to my school. Just an amazing teacher. Our population has grown to around 60 kids, initially around 28, and we're still growing, so that's great, job security. She has 27 years of experience. I found out this evening she's here with her family, her mom, her dad, her husband, her kids. Mom was a teacher and guided her into a great profession. So Dana she's the total package as an E&L teacher. She goes above and beyond for her students, delivering high quality instruction, making sure each student feels loved and supported, and she gets results. Our school rate of students graduating from the E&L program is out of this world. It's all because of her hard work. You could tell that she takes pride in her work, and we take pride knowing that she's on our team. Dana Thompson. Next, I'd like to invite up Miss Amanda Peterson. Yeah, very well deserved. Right. So Amanda, right now, she is our lead essential skills teacher. She's been an assistant in the essential skills room for the last 2 years, and this year she's taking over the lead. She's actually teaching in the classroom. She's going to school to finish up her degree, as well as being a mom, helping with homework at night. She's probably exhausted, but you can't tell. She brings positive energy every single day. This is Amanda's 3rd year at Pleasant Grove. She has served as an essential skills assistant for the first 2 and is currently the lead teacher while she was in the process of getting her license. She embodies our school mission, which is safe and loved. She is a natural in the classroom and is best known for her humor, her grace, her love, and the compassion she shares with the kids and our staff daily. Join me in recognizing Amanda Peterson. Thank you, that was fun. And last but not least, you guys met Mason. Mason, come on up here, bud. You're lucky that they said 3 or 4 sentences only, because I could write a book on this guy. I knew I was going to recognize Mason when he was in 2nd grade. I knew when it was his 5th grade year, it was going to be him. I've never met a kinder individual. He makes me want to be kinder. And I tell you, he personifies kindness, he models positive character traits, and reaches for personal excellence every single day. He gives his best, and his classmates will tell you that. I experienced that last year in 4th grade. I went to his class, didn't I? And they weren't doing too well. And I said, can you think of anybody that would make the right choice all the time? And everyone said, Mason. The best way to describe Mason is he's an old soul. He's got a selfless personality. He's the kind of kid that would give the shirt off his back to help someone else. He is kind, he is considerate, he's compassionate, and his heart is absolutely beautiful. Join me in recognizing Mason Garst. Oh, yeah, Mason, come on up.
Madam President, if I may, I would just like to recognize, we have some situations here where parents were involved. And that is one of the backbones of our community. These kids don't get to be the way they are on their own. The parents are a big reason why they are the way they are. So kudos to you and kudos to back there.
Okay, up next, we have the safety and discipline report. And I think Dr. Long and Chief Jackson are going to help us out.
Chief Jackson's going to start it. We're going to add Mr. Bronkella, and then I'll bring up the end.
Okay, sounds great.
It's a tough act to follow right there. Thanks for having me tonight, and I'm going to go over a few of these kind of boring stats, but they're very interesting for last year. So we talk about runs and arrests, so I'll just give you a definition of what a run is. That's a call that we either generate or Johnson County generates. And so with some of the new technology that we have last year with Centegix, Centegix is the reason why these numbers are a little bit higher than they have been in the past. And so 707 calls. Just to take that into consideration, when I first started about 14 years ago, we averaged probably about 250 calls. And so that was with a department of 2. And so now that we have 7 sworn officers, more technology, which gives the teachers more capabilities of alerting us when there's a situation. So not to say that every situation deems an arrest, but it allows our guys to get there in an orderly fashion. So the 707 number is relatively high, but it's a good thing because it gives our teachers the assurance and to know that if they push that button, we're there. And so with that being said, 72 arrests. And so not every single one of these 72 is going to jail. So we have two separate types. So we have one that we can forward to the prosecutor, and then we have an outright arrest where, depending on the next page that I show you guys, depending on the actual crime dictates whether or not they go to jail or not. So we try not to take kids to jail. Sometimes it's out of our hands based off of their actions, but 72, obviously it's a whole lot higher than in the past, 84 from last year, but there's a lot of other data that it can explain that. So see, here's some of these arrests by types. I won't mention them all. You guys can kind of see them on the graph, but you can see that a majority of our arrests are batteries. So a battery could be a fight, an argument, a push, anything verbal. And so majority of the time it's student on student, but you can see that in some cases we've had students that's lashed out to parents, us as a staff, as police officers, some of the teachers and admin. Theft, strangulation sounds a little crazy, but that's just more so of just a victim stating X, Y, and Z. So we have battery with bodily injury. Typically, those are the ones that deem us to take those kids in and outright them right then and there. So anytime that there's a black eye, blood, anything like that, that's when we're taking those kids to jail. So some of the other numbers that are relatively high is our possession of marijuana. Those numbers can fluctuate a little bit just for the simple fact of all of the devices that they have now to smoke marijuana or to carry marijuana. So you have the vape pens, sometimes THC, sometimes they have small fractions of it. Sometimes they're not in our possession. So we really do a good job of explaining to the deans of students that before they search a bag, to make sure they were present so that it's in our presence so that we can then take it to the next level. So if they search that bag without us there, that just goes as an infraction for us, and then we're sending that information to the parents and up to the prosecutor. So that's why those numbers can go up or down based off of how we see and what's in our presence. So we've had 3 K-9s. We've retired 2. We're down to 1. I don't know if I want to have any more because they're a lot of work, but they do a great job. And so Ozzy has had 12 deployments last year. Now deployments are anything that we need him out. So if we see if we're doing locker searches, searches in the high school for the cars, that would be a deployment. That doesn't mean that he was only out in the schools 12 times. And so he's out and about in the schools all the time. The kids really love him. We didn't generate any arrests from his deployments or searches, which is always a good thing. He's done 9 school presentations in 72 hours of training, and he has a double-blind certification completed this year for narcotics and firearms, which just means that he's a little bit better than he was last year, and hopefully we keep continuing to use him. We keep those numbers of arrests at 0, but he's doing his job, and the kids love him, and our handler does an exceptional job of taking care of him as well. It's a full-time job.
Sorry to interrupt, but we are able to borrow sheriff's dogs if we
Yeah.
need to, right?
Yes, sir. So when we do large searches, which we usually do at least once a year at the high school, we'll borrow other dogs from Clark Pleasant, from. Yes, yep. And we'll usually not shut the school down, but we'll go on a soft lockdown. We'll go into multiple classrooms. And so we usually don't give the kids or the staff a heads up, so they don't really know what's going, and we kind of get in so we don't take away from their learning. So here are some of the citations. You're going to see the 436, which is crazy because this is the first year that we've done this. And so we met with the high school last year, and we were noticing we had a significant amount of parking issues. And so kids that were falsifying documents stating that they had a parking pass, parking in spots they weren't supposed to park in, parking in places where the fire trucks are supposed to be, or the police officers. And so they really wanted to crack down on that. So we developed a software that allowed our officers the ability to write citations based off of our admin, and mostly our deans. And so the deans would go out with us, we would walk the parking lot, and whoever was parked in spots they weren't supposed to got a citation. So those numbers were relatively high, and that money, I think the citation is somewhere like around $5 or something like that. It's not very, very expensive. For the most part, I think everyone paid it. There's a few seniors that waited to the last second, and then when they were told they weren't going to walk for graduation, all of a sudden their pocketbooks came out and the $5 came out. They might have went up to 10, but and so it generates a little bit of extra cash flow for the high school and for our police department. So with the high school, with the money that they made, I think they bought 2 brand new cameras this year, and so usually that's out of our budget or the corporation's budget. So that came out of their safety plan. So saved us a little bit of money and got 2 really nice cameras that they really, really needed. And so the citations we write, those are all within the school district. And so a long time ago when I first started, we had some officers that were writing tickets on 135, on 69, and it's not a good look, and we kind of got reprimanded at that time. And so our guys know that if they're going to write citations, it's all within their daily activities. And so if they're going from the high school to North Grove or to Maple Grove, wherever they're at, and they see something that happens in front of them, they obviously have to act. But we'll do traffic and speed details in the neighborhoods surrounding our schools, and or in the areas out front of our elementary schools. And so, and you can see out of the 87, 33 were warnings, and so warnings are always good. Everyone has an excuse why they're speeding, so kind of show them a little bit of grace. That goes a long way. So, all right, so training. We are mandated to have at least 24 hours of training. So that is with, if you can see in this small writing, some of them are our state mandates. And so our state mandates will have some of our mental health. It has our firearms. It has our EVO, which is our driving. And then it also has little things like domestic violence and autism awareness. But we always like to go above and beyond. Dr. Long asks me every single year to make sure that our guys are some of the highly trained officers in the county, and we usually are. And so this year kind of shows just based off of our hours. Cooper obviously has 123 hours, but I sent him to a lot of conferences, and within those conferences are some of these. So Alzheimer's, the second 2 big words that pretty much is just Narcan training, and then autism is huge because we have a pretty big population of that, and we deal with kids on a daily basis. And then all of our officers have gone to basic SRO training, bias-based policing. The big one this year, 3 of us went to the CEPTED. So CEPTED is just a way for us to come back and do assessments of our buildings. And so we did, Dr. Long, how long was that ago? About 5-6 years ago, when we called Safe Haven in, and we paid a pretty penny for that, which is what we needed at the time to get grants and stuff that we've been continuing to get. But we're now trained and able to do that training and those assessments on our own. So our goal this year is to have each building assessed. And so with that being said, that would be probably a 13-page document, a video, pictures that show some of the things that we need to do to be better, and some of the things that we do well. So we're going to take that upon ourselves to meet with each building administrator and go over that. And so some of it are things that they can fix, some of it is things that we can fix, but and then it just puts us up to par on all the things that we need to do in order to get some of the grants that we continue to get. And going through that, some of the things that I think are the most important is the mental health piece. Every conference that we go to, they have great speakers, and so we're in there 40 hours. Out of those 40 hours, we're probably getting 16 hours of extra training in those categories. And so use of force, obviously we don't have any of that, so that as well. So we're obviously, with the way the chart's set up, we're above the hours that we're supposed to be at, and that's something that we'll continue to do in the future. Assistant Police Chief Cooper, he just got promoted. He's done his 32 hours of supervisor and management, which is what the NASRO class puts on. So all of our officers have the basic 40 hours, and then every single one of them has an additional 40 hours with an advanced, and now we have a supervisor, which Cooper and I both have, and then SEPTED is through NASRO as well. And so Cooper just submitted his documents to be a, it just slipped my mind. I had it last year, but it's just an accolade that I've already forgot. Thank you. Put the pressure on you. So it's just pretty much just saying that over the course of his career, that he's gotten over 200 or so hours that are all documented that give us another high certification. So I'll get that here and I'll share that with you guys too. So Cooper and myself will be the two officers. Dr. Long asked that all of our officers eventually have that. So with that being said, it takes time. You know, I've got 23, 24 years of experience. Cooper's almost at 15. We have another officer that's at 10 or 12. He'll be the next one. So it takes around 5 to 8 years to accumulate those hours in order to reach that certification. So hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have another. Our contacts. So contacts meaning what we usually do on a normal basis. And so this shows that, wow, you know, the SROs are doing traffic more than they're doing anything. That's not true, but it is a big piece of what we do. So in the morning, you guys obviously know that logistically speaking, this is an absolute nightmare from 7 to 7:30 with 3 schools merging and starting school. So we're out there with the help of the new light. Hopefully that in itself will take care of itself and will allow the officer that usually sits there to be inside the school. So that's my goal of hopefully getting more people in the schools from 7 to 7:30, where we have thousands of students and limited supervision. So those are the hours that we go per month in traffic control. This also is football games, basketball games, anything else that we have going on at the high school, and in the summertime when we have all kinds of large events. At the bottom, the guest speaking. Guest speaking is always a little bit higher in the beginning of the year. Just that's when teachers are more apt to ask us to come in and talk to their classes. And for whatever reason, we send out every single year to all the teachers, hey, please use us. If there's a topic you want us to come in and talk about, and we probably get 3 to 4 responses, and I don't know why, but we offer it every single year. Our guys do a good job of, when they're in the building, going in the classrooms, talking to kids. And so some of these hours aren't fully documented, but our guys do a really good job of talking to kids. We're in there talking to different teams. And so that's pretty much based off of whether or not a teacher is willing to reach out and ask for help or ask for our assistance. And so student mentoring, I don't think you can put an hour. These are all documented. So if we have a student that comes in and requests to talk to a police officer or an SRO, that's what those, excuse me, that's what those numbers are. That doesn't mean every time that we stop and talk to a kid in the hallway, or we ask a kid how their day is, or if they're crying and they want to talk because they don't feel comfortable talking to their counselor or to their teacher or any other adult for that matter. We have multiple hours in a day that we're constantly talking to kids, playing kickball, dodgeball, whatever the case may be, and it just builds that rapport and bridges that gap. But unfortunately, those are statistics that are tough to put a number on. And so I don't want you guys to think like, oh man, that's pretty small, especially in the month of April and March. But those are always tough because it's spring break and kids are a little bit rowdy and they're ready to go home rather than talk to the police.
Chief,
Yes, sir.
it's national practitioner.
National, that's it, right there. And so I'll get you guys the definition of what that entitles and what those hours are, so you kind of see like what it is that I was talking about. But it's kind of a big deal in the NASRO world, and hopefully we'll have at least 3 of our 7 officers that have that. The information is based off right here, just traffic control takes up a majority of that. Hopefully this year we can go ahead and start kind of diving into that and lowering that number so we can get our officers in the building more so before and after school. And next on the agenda.
One quick question.
Yes, sir.
Didn't you guys have some kind of training in this past year at one of our elementaries?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. So that goes back to our slide of active shooter. And so our active shooter training, we have a class that we take. There is an online class that we take. So it's about 16 hours. And then this year, myself and Chief Price from Clark Pleasant decided to get together, and we've been doing it for this is our 3rd year where we kind of collaborated together, and this year we brought it to Center Grove. And so we had it in early June, and we used Maple Grove, and so we had the whole building, and we brought in fire, several different agencies from Greenwood to Johnson County to Bargersville, you name it, everyone in Johnson County was there. And we also had several other school districts that are within our 30-mile radius. And so it was a very big training. It was 3 days? Or it was 3 days. It was 1 day of in-class training, 2 of training, and then 3rd day was scenario-based. And so we were able to run that scenario-based with all the police officers and with fire. So very successful. And what I'm learning is the more that we do this, the more that we're a lot different than other places, because and Mike can contest to this, fire and police don't usually get together, and not only that, they don't communicate very well. So when they get on the scene, fire does one thing, and police does the other, and then all of a sudden we're sitting talking Monday morning quarterbacking and wondering how we can do things better. Well, we've already eliminated all that. My relationship with Mike, with Chief Pell and Chief Funkhauser, we go above and beyond. We meet several times a year. Our training is with police and fire, and so we knock this one out of the park. And next year, other people are starting to get on board and wanting it at their school. So I think next year it's going to be at Franklin. Selfishly, we want it at our school again because it's good publicity, but we actually enjoy working with our fire and other police departments. And so it's not like that in other parts of the country. So thanks for bringing that up. But that was a huge piece. That took probably 6 months to coordinate. And yeah, I'm forced to work with this guy though, but he's not bad. Yeah. And you see it in football games and everything that we do, it's always police and fire. And so that's one thing that Chief Pell and I really wanted to work on when we first met. And so we have the same vision, and with him being a reserve police officer, he sees our lens, and we see theirs as well. They just get to kind of hang out on a lazy boy chair a little bit more than we do, but I had to throw that in there, Mike. So, yeah, it's just right here. I mean, we share a building, right? So, they're great cooks, and so, yeah, it's fun. We all get along very well, so we kind of throw a couple jabs here and there.
Chief, are we still getting a lot of requests for tours of the EOC from other
Oh, from, yeah.
Is that continuing?
Yeah, that will continue. So with our partnership with Motorola and ERS, Motorola brings in a lot of different clientele, which is good for us. But we've got, I think, another one coming with the FBI. We have a few downtown in Indy, IMPD's coming, and I think Purdue is coming back as well. So go Boilers.
Is that 24/7 yet?
No, sir. It's still, the fire department's 24/7, yes. But police, we shut down around 10 is when our last SR or SSO leaves, and he's only there for pretty much monitoring the buildings and taking phone calls in case of burglary alarms or fire alarms. So,
Starts at what, 6 the next morning?
yeah, Lynn's usually in the building around 6:45. So we'll have to give you a tour as well if you haven't been. Oh, there you go then. Well, come on, Cass. Your husband's been there. Yes, that is. There might be a game or two up. Oh, no, you're good. Any other questions? So Joe and I had the opportunity to go to a safety and security forum in Texas, NCS4. And so pretty much what they are, I actually went to the conference this summer in Phoenix, and there was about 1,000 people at this conference. It's one of the largest safety and security conferences, and I got to meet a lot of people that are way above my pay grade and the things that they do. So for instance, I met with, at my table, I had a chief of police for Michigan State. I had director of safety and security for Wisconsin, and I had a gentleman that was from Europe, and he was from Denmark, and he was in charge of all of the soccer FIFA games. And so I didn't realize how crazy that was, but to coordinate security and safety for all of the venues that they have for FIFA. And I don't know if you've ever been over in Europe and been to a game in Europe. It's absolutely chaos. Like the things that they're allowed to bring into the stadium, the noise that they're allowed to make, and the things that they say and do is absolutely crazy. And so to have the security background that he had, the stories that he was sharing with us was unbelievable. So we made friends and exchanged information just so we can do a better job at what we do. But in a nutshell, just it's the best practice is what we're at right now. Just trying to figure out what other universities are doing, what other school districts are doing, and what other large venues are doing, like the Pacers and the Colts. And so, again, it takes away people's freedom. It's a little bit inconvenient, but it also allows the safety of the players, the coaches, and then the people that are in the building watching a game and paying the top dollar that they're paying to watch a game without having some crazy person threatening them with a knife or a gun or anything like that. So, and so we both had an opportunity to go to the one earlier in the year in Texas, and Joe and I kind of just came back and figured out what can we do, bring away from that would help us do a better job at what we do and make it a safer environment for our football games and our basketball games. So we're going to start a little slow and then eventually start building up and adding them to other events. But I'll let Joe kind of take over from here.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
So some of the things that we talked about when we were at the forum, which not only did best practice for other districts in the United States, but also they did improvements, and we were part of that process of giving our improvements of what they want to do as best practice. So on that, we looked at what's our biggest concern, our biggest event. I think you're not there. Time's up, yeah. I think the HDMI, yep. So I guess the evacuation plan right now.
Aboard.
We just wanted you to get up.
See if you still have it.
So some of the things we talked about at the safety forum was if we had an emergency, whether that be weather-related or weapon-related, we got to evacuate quickly. So our biggest event that we have right now is football, so that's kind of been more of an emphasis, especially with us walking into football season at home next week. So if we had to evacuate the field with something, and it could be something like a extreme storm, what's the safest way to do that without getting chaos more than what's already happening? And so one of the things we look at are where's everybody sitting? Where's the mapping of this? Where's our restrictions? Where's the lack of restrictions? And so we'll have a later slide revamping that. Large bags coming in, what's coming in those large bags? What's going out in those large bags? What are the people bringing? That was a huge emphasis amongst many districts in the United States. And you know, when we go to other places, there are bag restrictions. When we go to state championships, there are bag restrictions. So what do they have? What do we have? And we want to try and make it reasonable based on what we see. And some of the information we have, we gathered from other districts we go to on a regular basis as well. And then there's a lack of supervision, not necessarily by our staff members or our workers, but if you've been to some of our events, there can be a chaotic number of young people running around, not just having fun, but just everywhere and horse playing. That can cause possible issues as well. I remember last year we had a pretty hot game, week 2, and we had multiple security runs. Well, some of those kids were getting in the way of our medical personnel trying to treat people that have collapsed or whatever may have happened due to these heat concerns. So one of the things, we upgraded the map a little bit, and we wanted to put a focus on where are people coming in. Because if someone sees an open gate, they like to just come in, no matter if there's a ticket taker there or not, or if there's security there or not, and they try to walk through. So when we send out this information to our opponents, we're going to reemphasize where our parking is, our general parking, which is still in the north lot as well as the east lot for our general population. But one thing that was really happening a lot more was down that southeast corner by the tennis courts. People would park there or by the baseball diamonds, and fans would walk in. Well, when fans walk in that way, they get into the track and field area because there's no entrance to the visitor bleachers there. And to get to our home bleachers, you have to walk through the field to get to the home bleachers. So we want to really make that a lot more secure and really emphasize don't come into that area. We have attendants at everywhere on the north side, on the northeast, northwest. We also have them on the southwest corner. So pushing out that information through multiple sources, which we'll talk about in a little bit too, will help them know where to go in and eliminate that southeast fan access. So another thing we had when we talk about the inside of the football, inside the fence, and we have an evacuation route. So let's say we have a storm, or we have a gunman, or we have a weapon, or emergency in evacuation piece. Well, we want to make sure that our participants, our coaches, and our staff members are getting to the appropriate area. And their appropriate area for safety is the locker room. So the way it was, and if you've been to our field, you've seen some of the movement already occurring. The way it was, you would have to go through a south set of bleachers, which can cause people to have to detour, or other people are in that area. So this year, we're going to seclude those south set of bleachers. We pulled one outside of the fence. The other one stayed inside, and we're going to continue to allow our 9th grade football team, who's part of the event, to be inside there. And then a lot of the people that were staff members and coaches' families that were in that south area, we're going to reserve the north side for them. So they still have a great view of the field like they were. They'll still be in the same location, and they'll actually be next to the band, supporting some of our other students that are part of our event. If there's an overflow issue, there's a bleacher section by the Duke Pavilion. But what that does, it allows all those other people that were inside of our parameters of the field to now have evacuation routes through the northeast, northwest, and through the southwest corners to get them safely out. So when we're trying to run those players down the south side, we're not also trying to corral other people who we don't know, or separating kids from parents and so forth. Also, we'll have, if you see on there, we have a home and visitor passes areas designated. We're going to do more of a pass safety, which I believe happened a lot more during COVID, or obviously in state tournaments. When we go to Lucas Oil, we can't have everybody that was on the sideline. So we're going to mimic a lot of that, which is very common, a lot of our opponents do already. It's not something new, it's just a little bit more inconvenient for us to tidy that up. These are some of the policies that we've already had in place, and we're going to continue to display those and continue to promote, no tobacco, no alcohol, outside food or drink, the pets, and then also outdoor sports equipment was something new for us last year. I don't know how many times anyone that has been a fan that was either in the bleachers or standing by a fence watching a game and you almost get hit by that random football or that random baseball or whatever it may be, tennis ball that the kids are playing with. I don't want to discourage kids from being active and playing, but I also want a safe atmosphere for our fans. We don't want someone randomly getting hit in the head with a ball, then we have to go treat them in the middle of something else going on. So last year, we had that up, we had signage up, we had information out, and it reduced very quickly. There's not a lot of complaints, people understand, we want a safe environment. And the kids still have places to move around and do things at the game before, just without that.
I assume we put this out, that this also holds true for the parking lots?
This is inside the gate of what we have, so the parking lots, we have gone out to, if there's an issue with something, if someone reports
We've had
it.
some issue, haven't we?
I mean, as far as fights or,
Liquor.
that's a good question. We haven't had any arrest. I think we've had some people that have been unruly that we've asked to go away, but we, yeah, we haven't had any like alcohol bottles left or anything like that from the tailgating. And so they usually do a fairly good job of that. But to be honest, most of our guys, not most, but all of our guys are already inside the venue.
Yeah.
So it's the parking lot is more of a reactionary thing, just because we're usually, we have probably 5 or 6 officers that are working. And because of the amount of people that are coming in
Yeah, their
into the
focus.
game, our focus is
So I
inside.
guess my question then asking is, are we sending this out to the community that's not acceptable?
Yeah, I would assume that
This
they
this
already
information
know
is
that
going
it's-
out on
I
social
don't know if
media,
that's
Parent
something
Square.
Stacy can answer or not.
So you're ahead of our slides. It's gonna be
Oh,
on
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Is this applicable to all outdoor sporting events, or are you just talking football right now?
Well, these are what we try to enforce at all of our outdoor events.
Okay.
I know that some of them are not restricted by the gates, that people are exposed a little bit differently. But yeah, if we see at a tennis match, kids are over there throwing a ball around,
I've been
hey,
guilty of bringing my dog to the tennis matches, so I want to be a good.
And that's a little bit different, that's a little bit different though, you know, because you're still technically, like, that's like walking your dog along the path, right? So, I mean, and I see people doing that in the evenings, right?
carrying the
So if you
plastic
just
bag and
happen to
picking
be
up, aren't you?
walking your dog and you're watching the tennis game from outside,
Okay,
that's
we're really talking
a
about
little bit different.
by fence in the
Inside,
area.
correct, yeah.
more like. Service, yeah. Service pet, yeah.
Yeah, you have to have your identification and your certification too.
The next slide is something that's a little bit newer, well, is newer to us at home, not new to us on the road, is clear bags. So this is where examples were given from multiple venues we go to, and then also discussed when we went to our forum with the clear bag procedures. 12 inch by 12 inch by 6 inches deep is what is very, very common. We do have the small clutches, which are not clear. Those are, I don't know if anyone here has one today, but it's, yep, right there. So small clutches, those are acceptable, those are allowed. It's more the big cluttery giant bags that people bring in. And then there's also plastic storage bags. Many of the places, yeah, like that. Many of the places we have even put on there like plastic Ziploc bags because they're clear bags and they still fit what the people need in there. So this will be something that's new that, you know, the officers are already well-versed at the gates to help educate the people as they come in. We are sending out information, which we'll cover in a slide here in a moment, of how to get this information to everyone, as well as sending it out to our opponents when they come with their fans. I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
So there'll be a few upset people at first of either A, they didn't see the email or any of the information that went out, which we've been putting that out. So, and we'll just ask them to go back to their car and place their bag and come in. So it's a game, you know, for the first 3 home games, it's gonna be warm, and then the last 3 it will be cold. So you're gonna have someone bringing in water in the first part and then bringing in the blanket in the second part. So if it's in your bag, and we're not gonna go and search through every single bag, but if it looks suspicious or if it looks like there's a little bit too much stuff, we'll ask them to empty the contents. And so we don't wanna hold up the line, but we just wanna make sure that people understand that, hey, safety is a big issue. And there's certain things you shouldn't be bringing into a football game. So that's our main goal.
So how are we getting this communication out? So I have an athletic newsletter that goes out every Monday. For the last 2 weeks, the clear bag I know has been in it, and last week had the other reminder slides with everything else not to bring to an event or prohibited. I sent out a staff email to the high school staff on Tuesday of this week, letting them know some of the new things going on, so they're aware and they can prepare for it. Also letting them know about the seating areas if they wanted to attend the first football game, just so that they can plan ahead on where to come in, what the policy is, making sure that they have their tags or their staff badges. That's how they're gonna be able to get access. And then Mrs. Conrad has gone through with the district employee newsletter, and she's sending out the information as well to all the district employees. But we have district-wide flyers, and then I will be posting continually on social media and adding that as we get closer to our game. You know, when we do those game day announcements or weekly reminders of games, that's a good time to start putting that in, because people are looking like, oh, who's playing on this day? Well, then after that, I can throw on that other slide and do reminders all the way through the week. You know, the biggest one, and I don't want to single out football as an only sport, it's just our biggest event. So football is something that is going to be a little bit more popular, people watching next week. So next week will be very impactful on adding more and more communication out to this.
For the first time ever, I don't have a kid in Center Grove schools, okay? So all of a sudden, all communication from Center Grove School, including the athletic newsletter, are gone. And there's probably a lot of people that still go to events.
You can subscribe to it, it's open to the public.
I don't think a lot of people know that. I do.
Hopefully, they're following my social media and they'll see my graphics. That's a way to reach some of the others that don't, because there's a lot of people come to our games that don't have kids in our schools, and I want more of them to come, but I just don't know another way of reaching it other than the newsletters and the social media posts and this thing out.
The marketer in me hopes that somebody told the athletic boosters to buy some CG branded clear bags to sell at the games.
It may have been mentioned at some point, but I don't
Sell
think
at
that's
the ticket
happening.
counter?
I heard that tennis may need a fundraiser.
I think it might be a fundraiser. I'm out there.
I think that's-
While you two are standing there, I would like to give kudos to both of you. You know, I've been here long enough to see how the police department has grown from where we started with one officer to where you have taken it now, and children feeling safer and the community feeling safer. Heaven forbid anything ever happens. And Joe, boy, what you've done with the athletic department with the challenges you've had has been pretty fantastic. The sports app makes it so much easier, especially loading when the games are onto our calendar, now that it's working. But the communication that you have, and I'm hearing good things from parents in the different sports areas and so forth. So kudos to both of you.
Yeah, and Katie and Joni, without them, we wouldn't be where we are. I know. Got to give them their piece too.
Is there any other questions you guys have?
Thank you.
Comments?
Thank you.
criticisms?
Keep it up, guys.
Thanks.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Russell, I thought you were going to say it's the first time we've had our athletic director and our chief of police work on game day safety. And
Well,
I
yeah.
think that's something that's really important too, to show that, you know, this isn't just one person's idea. This is an effort, and we intentionally sent them to really an extracurricular activity safety, because we feel like we do a pretty good job during the school day inside the school. And one of the areas that we wanted to improve on was the extracurricular after-school stuff. And they came back, and I told them, if we send you, you got to come back and make a presentation, make a recommendation. So
Well,
they
it's
did
starting
that.
to- It's starting to recognize what departments you probably ought to have working together.
Sure.
Instead of as individual departments doing their reports, they ought to be getting together because they do have conjoined situations. So
Yeah.
kudos.
Well, we, just real quick too, before it was just football games where we had security, right? And then it kind of leaked over to basketball, and we would have one officer. And those were just happened to be two boys' sports, right? So when Joe came over, we were trying to work and figure out how we could get more security at other events, right? Like baseball, girls soccer, softball. And I think this past year, we've had a security officer, not at every single game, but at a majority of the games, prior to them going into sectionals. And so our guys have done a really good job of just, there's a list, and they'll work a few games here or there, and we've saved money. The athletic department has saved money for the way that Dr. Long has allowed us to do it. So, so I think parents are starting to see that presence. Bad thing is now it's expected, right? So those are things that we have to continue to work on, and make sure that it's always there, that there is a presence, because people do feel safe that way. But that's all on this guy right here. So we.
Softball, soccer, and lacrosse, those stands are right next to each other.
Oh yeah.
You hear what the opposing two parents say.
Yeah. Parents are crazy.
It's not a nice thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I have the next part. We'll go through some of the discipline reports that we make. Go ahead. So you'll see the incidents by type and level, and if you'll notice, again, our deans and Lynn Deaver did a great job to make sure that we don't have everybody's favorite other so we've taken care of that. I went through, Lynn tallied all this, I went through just so you have an idea of what went up or what's gone down from last year. So that's what the arrows are. I think one of the notes that I'd like to make is we've seen an increase in aggressive behavior at the high school, disruptive behavior, and inappropriate acts. Those have increased by quite a few. At the middle school, we've seen an increase in fighting and verbal aggression, profanity, defiance, and then the elementary, in really just defiance. And if you look at the elementary numbers, the discipline has gone down in almost every other category than the three that have the red arrows. And I think we can attribute that to our assistant principals and our counselors and our social workers that have worked really hard with our kids. We talk about restorative practices, and our teachers and administrators have bought into that in the elementary, and I think it's really showing based on the information that we have here. So was really pleased with that. Our attendance numbers, if you notice that, we're down at every level, both, at the elementary, middle, and high school. So we're really proud of that. And again, that's due to the hard work of the APs at the elementaries and our deans and at the middle school and high school. They do a nice job. I think we still have some ways to go. We're going to talk a little bit about our climate. We heard when we were interviewing board candidates, and most of the people talked about one of the things they'd like to see us improve was the climate in the buildings. And we've made that a point with our principals, and we'll continue to work on that and see if we can't get better there. Go ahead. So our in-school suspensions, those really stayed roughly the same, not a big increase for any of those areas. We did increase in ISS a little bit. In OSS, we increased just a little bit in high school and middle school and decreased in the elementary schools. We've tried really hard to find alternatives to an out-of-school suspension. We know that kids don't learn when they're not in school, and so again, the work that the counselors and social workers are doing with restorative practices and trying to find a way to keep our kids in school, and hopefully we'll continue to see these numbers go down, but sometimes you just have to, we have to suspend a student. But, our first objective is to try to keep them in school. This just breaks it out in a different chart. I won't go through all those. You saw that earlier. It's just a different way to look at that. Go ahead. There's middle school. Go ahead. Elementaries again. Defiance is big, and we really need to continue to work on that. And I think this is good data. Christy Berger and I talked today. This is great data to take to our counselors and data to take to our APs and deans and say, here are our numbers. What do you think are the reasons why we're doing this? And we have several years worth of numbers, and it'll give them data to chew on and then to come up with a plan to try to help eliminate these, or at least reduce them. We're not going to eliminate them, but go ahead. So our expulsions, we've done a nice job, I think, of trying to keep kids in. Again, if you look, you can see the first column for each level is where we were last year. We did 29 expulsions last year at the high school, and we were 26 this year, and you can see the big number of increase in alternatives to expulsion. And I think that's a credit to, again, to the deans who have tried to figure out ways to keep kids in. A lot of times the expulsions out of the 26 that you see are sometimes kids that we put back in as an alternative to expulsion under a behavior contract, and they violate that. And so, you know, we understand sometimes, we at least have given the kids and the parents an opportunity to come back to school and try to follow the rules and do what we expect them to do. And sometimes they just can't do that, and we end up expelling them. But our elementary numbers are good. You know, our goal is to never suspend, expel an elementary student. Sometimes that's hard also, depending on what they've done, but you can see we've reduced that. Go ahead. So, you know, we have the anonymous reporting. It's funny, these numbers almost stayed identical. We had a few more in safety than we've had in the past, but most of them are general tips. I think that means we're getting the word out. We've gotten some really good, valuable information from the information that has been submitted anonymously, and our principals do a good job. You know, they get the notification that a report's been made. If they don't respond within so much time, I get that notification too, and I think Christy does now. But if they don't respond in so much time, they get a reminder notification that you got an anonymous report, you need to take action on it. And then once they take action on it, I get another notification, and Christy gets one that says they've taken action, and we can see what that action is. So this has been really good for us, and I think, you know, we'll continue to see that grow. I think that was it for me.
That's it.
Any questions?
I like that you're getting notices, that there's a time frame that they need to report back, because we've had some issues with that.
Sure. And you know, sometimes it comes through on their email, and they may not be checking it. And what I'll do, and I know Christy does too, is like, hey, you might want to check your email. You got an alert, and then they get right on it. And so they've done a pretty good job.
It's how the communication.
Right. Mm-hmm. And Christy will be giving this report next year. I'm just. Okay, thank you.
Okay. We have student performance data, and I believe Dr. Simmers is going to talk to us about that.
Yes, so can you hear me? I think I've got this on correctly, right? Okay. So Madam President and members of the board, I appreciate being given the opportunity to kind of give you a high-level overview of the district student performance data for 2024. So this evening, I really want to talk with you about the several things on the slides here. I want to talk to you about academic goals that we have for Center Grove, give you a little bit of an update of what testing is going to look like in our schools over the next couple of years, look at some comparative data, including I Read, I Learn, SAT scores. I also threw in some graduation rates for you to take a look at, and then follow up or finalize with some peer school data in Johnson County, and then looking at some comparative data of districts that would be similar to our demographics and size. So obviously our goal here in Center Grove is to focus on supporting and enhancing an effective system for learning to meet all students' academic needs. I don't think any of us would argue that that's the overarching priority that we have for our students when we think about offering them excellent educational experiences. When we think about how are we going to measure that, we talk a lot about success criteria or key performance indicators. So what is the data that we're going to track over time to ensure that we are actually making progress towards that goal? So some of the things we look at are I Learn passing percentages. Obviously, we're taking a look at our I Read 3 data. We're looking at our graduation rates, our SAT scores. Something else that we're really taking a look at are those essential learning mastery percentages. So we've identified standards or essential learning skills at every grade level, and we have assessments in place to measure progress and mastery of those skills. So it's important for us to take a look at those as well. And obviously, we're also looking at achievement gap data. So when we think about the overall performance of our students, how are subgroups of students performing, and are there gaps and areas we really need to hone in and focus on? Those gaps include special education, our high ability students. We need to make sure that we're growing all learners. Our English language learners, that's a population of students that has grown dramatically in the district over the last few years. And then we're taking a look at our students who are economically disadvantaged. So those students with high poverty rates, we have 3 schools that we've identified as Title I schools for this year. So just to give you a brief overview of some testing changes in Indiana that will impact our students moving forward. With iLearn in grades 3 through 8, we do have new academic standards that were revised in 2020. And then there was the legislative reduction of those Indiana academic standards in 2023, where we were given information from the Department of Education about those essential skills that would be found on iLearn, and that we would want to ensure that our students were mastering those essential learnings or those essential skills within those grade levels and content areas. We are expected to be implementing those standards as part of our curriculum. So when we bring our curriculum collaborators together and we take a look at what our curriculum looks like, that scope and sequence as students transition from one grade level to the next, we're using these standards in that blueprint to really map out our curriculum and ensure that our resources are aligned to that. In 2024, we have the iLearn Summative is going to reflect those Indiana academic standards. We will be here in Center Grove piloting what is referred to as the checkpoints in grades 4, 6, 7, and 8. So that is something that Shannon is spearheading for the district as we prepare to have our students take those checkpoints this year. Then in 2025, we'll have the redesign of the through the year format where all students in grades 3 through 8 will be participating in those 3 checkpoints, plus the summative at the end or in the spring in grades 3 through 8. So that's just a little bit of what to expect. We will be communicating with families of students in grades 4 and at the middle school that your students will be participating in the checkpoint pilot. With iRead 3, the district did opt in 23 and 24 to have second grade students participate in iRead 3 testing, so we have some of that data. Just know moving forward in 2025, it is an expectation that all students across the state in second grade will be taking the iRead. So just a little bit of what to expect when we think about those state tests. Again, just to share with you, here's some comparative data I'm going to share with you. These are the areas that I'm going to focus in on here on the next few slides. So taking a look at our iRead data, lots of celebrations here. I want to make sure that I'm taking a look at my notes and that I'm trying to hit the highlights here. Obviously, overall, we did see an increase in the percentage of students successfully passing iRead from 23 to 24. We did have 2 schools that reached our goal of 95%. We also had 5 of the 6 elementary schools achieve passing percentages that were at or above 90%. So those are some things to celebrate. You can see that in looking at our second grade scores, we aren't satisfied with that dip from 66 to 58. We'll need to dive in and really take a look at that data to have a better picture of why we think that might have occurred. When we compare that data to the state data, obviously we're satisfied that we're performing above those state averages. However, it will be interesting to see what this data looks like a year from now, knowing that all students in the state will be taking iRead at the second grade. What I would share with you in looking at this data, having been here for about 45 days, is that we know that there's still work to be done to improve the learning experiences and opportunities of our students. So we are really honing in on taking a look at who these students are, those subgroups of students, looking at remediation, looking at interventions, making sure that we have solid research-based interventions in place and that we're progress monitoring to move those students along based on data. Some other things that we are doing, yeah.
Just so I understand, because second grade, third grade.
Sure,
When I'm looking at the second grade 2023, we had 66% pass.
correct.
And then they become third graders, so 2024, it's 92.5. The 66 doesn't take it again, right?
That's
Carry
correct.
forward.
The 66 who pass do not have to take it in third grade. So when we look at the number of students that we administered the test to in 2024, we were looking at that 34%,
So
getting them over the bar.
92.5%, I mean,
Yeah,
for those that didn't pass in second, most of them made it by third.
most. The goal would be
Still
all.
got the 7.5% that we're working on. And we
Correct.
Obviously, like to have 100%, it's never gonna happen, but.
But
I'm
we're
just
gonna keep
making sure
working
I
at it.
understand the data that
That's
that
correct.
carries
You are
forward.
correct. So when we look at that 58%, that 58% will not take the test in third grade.
2%,
Correct.
okay, and then it gets added on. Thanks,
Correct.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure I was carrying it forward here.
No worries.
And then the next step after this, the state hasn't yet passed that a third grader will be retained if not passing the test.
There is legislation that is specific to that. That is correct.
I will tell you it's leaning to doing that, and you're fighting hard not to.
It has passed.
It did pass.
It did pass.
So, we've had some long, strong talks with the state superintendent. as
Sure.
we're speaking, and told her, you can't do that to us without giving us the money and help, starting in preschool even, but at least kindergarten, first grade.
I think you're hitting the target, early intervention versus waiting until third grade to say, oh, we've got some challenges here.
We missed all those other years of intervention that should have been done.
Correct.
So we're fighting. We'll see where it goes.
In looking at this data, also to answer some of your questions about how are we addressing some of those learning challenges, for the past couple of years, we have implemented the University of Florida Literacy Initiative, which is a research evidence-based program to address phonics instruction. It's very explicit and systemic, and when we look at that transition to the science of reading, we need to ensure that we are instructing in the 5 components of reading in a very structured, explicit manner. So those will be areas that our principals and our instructional coaches and our teachers will be focusing on at the elementary level. Some other things will be targeting that instruction for those third grade students who didn't pass as second graders. Again, making sure that they're receiving intentional instruction in those 5 components. And I would also advocate that utilizing our PLC model and ensuring that we are having high-quality conversations with the use of data about student learning will help us target and be purposeful and intentional about that instruction. So moving on to some iLearn data. So what you're taking a look at here are the passing percentages of students at that grade level. This includes both English language arts and math. So as I review this data, or we start to dive in and dig into this data, I think a word that comes to mind is it's inconsistent. So if we look at the district's performance in iLearn, it's just inconsistent over time. So while there are pockets of successes, we also recognize that there's a room for improvement. Highlights include that the district does consistently perform above or well above the state average in all grade levels. We see growth in passing percentages at some grade levels, while we also see others drop over time. I'm going to show you in the next slide. I'll go ahead and let you cross over. A good measure of looking at data is looking at cohort data. So I wanted to highlight that when we're looking at iLearn data, what we would hope to see is that cohorts of students increase or grow from year to year. And so when I go back to that word of inconsistent, you can see that our third grade students in 2021 had a passing percentage of 51.8. Those same students in fourth grade were at 57.4, so we celebrate that. But look what happens in fifth grade. Now we're at 51.5, and in sixth grade we recover a little bit at 52.5. So looking at cohort data or groups of students is also extremely important. And while this is English language arts combined, I would also advocate that we need to be looking at cohort data by specific content area, English language arts and math, and we also need to be looking at that cohort data specific to those subgroups of students. So this is a high-level overview, just giving you that 20,000-foot view, knowing that our work is really in digging and diving into the data so that we can take a look at where we're needing to improve instruction to help our students be successful. Any questions about that?
I appreciate the fact that you're looking at that data based on cohorts on a year-over-year basis. That is, I think, key to maybe unlocking some of the issues that we see back in the third grade.
And again, utilizing our PLC process will be critical because this is where our teachers and our administrators and we as leaders need to be diving into the data and looking at the story that it's telling us so that we can improve teaching and learning and ensure that there's effective teaching happening in every classroom. We have some SAT data here. Again, you can see that the district's passing percentages are well above the state's average. However, you can also see that we fell a few percentage points in math. So again, trying to dig into that data to determine what happened there from 23 to 24 will be important. Also know that the SAT is only one option of meeting graduation requirements as they currently stand. Obviously, we will be getting further guidance from the Department of Education reflective of the new GPS diploma and what that means for our students moving forward. So again, just giving you a 20,000-foot view here of our SAT data.
When do we expect guidance on the new diploma? I saw a clip on the news yesterday where it sounds like they're sending it back to a study group.
So the second draft was released yesterday from the State Board of Education. The communication that Dr. Long and I have received, unless you've received anything differently, is that there will be public input and comment again before they finalize. It does look like they landed on one diploma track, is that what they were calling?
One base.
One base diploma, and then there will be diploma seals. Not exactly sure what that looks and sounds like for us just yet.
Do we understand, and I don't know if this, maybe this is a question for everybody at the table. Do we understand the problem they were trying to solve?
Workforce.
Workforce.
Workforce. Mm-hmm.
It was, so I.
Yes,
down at
correct.
CCP,
Green light. Krista, front, sorry.
Why, thank you. I should have told me that before.
She has a voice.
I know, I am kind of loud, but, so CICP's tied in with a lot of that through Ascend and through
Correct.
BioCrossroads, and so we've been looking, but there is a big workforce shortage coming in all different areas, and one of the ways they want to try to address that is have people at a younger age that are workforce ready. So one of the things that they're looking at across all these different groups, and Richard M. Fairbanks Foundation has put a lot of money behind it, is to think about how there could be work-based learning and how students could get credit, like high school credit, for those work-based experiences versus maybe taking like, I don't know, European art history or something like that. So that's what they're trying to solve, as I understand it. That's what I've been told.
You are correct.
Yeah, it's, yeah. It is kind of companies wishing a lot of things were taught at school, high school level, so they're not having to do it at the companies. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line thing there.
We're still getting a
But
lot
on
of
one side
feedback.
of it, it is good experience for kids, so there's.
We're still getting a lot of feedback about the soft skills that students are lacking. So that is intended to address some of those pieces and components too when you think about the portrait of a graduate.
I just had a president's meeting with ISBA presidents and, or board presidents. A lot of them, we all kind of came to the conclusion. One of the things I think we're seeing is you're not having as many students working like you used to now. What the data is, I can't recite that, but we know in our own community, you don't have as many students working because we have young adults needing those jobs now and doing those. So you got kids that get all the way through high school, all the way through college with hardly a work experience. And then they go to this important interview. Yeah, so that's one side of why they're kind of pushing for some of this to, start happening sooner. It's kind of going back to what we used to do, so to speak. It's just got to be worked out on how, because we are a community where we could do a lot of those paths, those work, we could find, if somebody wants to be a dancer, we'll be able to find their pathway for them in the Center Grove community. One of the presidents I talked with the other day, his entire school is 1,113, K through 12. Mm-hmm. They are not going to have the availability of pathways in that type of area. So that's what's battling right now is how are we going to, how's it going to be equitable across the state?
I'll move on to some graduation data. So just to share with you, again, over a period of about 5 years, you can see that Center Grove High School has worked diligently to increase their graduation rate. So that's something to celebrate, and we'll continue to keep our eye on that data point as well. And then just to share with you some comparative data of Johnson County. You can see here in comparison 23 to 24 how Center Grove is performing relative to other districts in the county. And then the last bit of comparative data I wanted to share with you is our peer ranking. So there's really a couple of things on the slide here. On the right-hand side, you will see the percentage of proficiency for like districts. So when I talk about like districts, I'm talking about districts whose demographics and size would be similar to ours. That's their percentage of ELA and math in grades 3 through 8. So it's a combined percentage. So you can see that we are performing extremely well in comparison. Again, still room for improvement. I think we would all argue there's room for improvement. That percentage or that data and information then is used to rank schools. So when I look at the left-hand side, what you're seeing there are those comparative school districts relative to their ranking. We are the dotted red line. So when I look at this graph, what stands out to me? Well, I see that blue line at the top that goes clear across to the top at number 1. So that's Brownsburg, and we can see their data and their passing percentage. I can see a green line there that shows they've moved from what appears to be down in the 75th. So let me pull up some data here. I don't have this committed to memory. I see a green line that's moved from about 76 and then has jumped in about 5 years to 8. If you can see that green line that I'm referring to, I'm interested to know what's taking place there, right? They've moved from 75th to 8th. That's Duneland.
I was gonna ask you that question, so.
Yeah, that's Duneland. I can't speak to what's happening there. But then I also noticed the one at the bottom that looks like it's at about a 105, which is actually a 102, dips down even further, and then is all the way back up to 35. I can speak to that district because that's a district that I worked in for 10 years. So I know the work that happened from 21 to 24, and that's the work that I hope to bring here to Center Grove as we look to improve the teaching and learning opportunities that we've had for students. Our ranking has been 19 for the last 3 years.
I'm sorry.
19 for the last 3 years. Other questions for me?
I think, I don't know so much as a question as it is, I think it's the same comment I make about this slide every year, that I see it. While we are doing well, and those are things to celebrate, we don't seem to be moving that red dotted line from comparative to the schools that have been consistently above us. So I think we need to begin to move that needle, however that looks or however that is, but we need to begin to move that needle. We've been pretty stagnant for several years comparative to the other schools. So that's your challenge.
Perfect. No surprises.
And I agree with you. The lines that jump up is because of the work that gets done.
It is.
I'm just gonna say it out loud. I'm suspect of Brownsburg straight line. I'm just suspect of that.
Fair enough.
I think you throw that outlier out because I think we all know
Yeah.
how that's achieved. And
But-
I think we've all agreed that that's not necessarily the route for us, but
But we can improve our line with the right work being done.
Well, the schools that are showing growth, those are the schools that we need to find a way to show growth, because we've not.
Right.
Like we said, we've been really flatlined for about 5 years, and we
Yeah,
need
but not like
to
straight
figure
line.
that out.
But we don't want to say we're all about customers.
Right.
We're about the entire
Yeah.
student. We're about the
We are.
entire-
We are about the entire student.
About getting them ready for the next step, whether it's college, whether it's workforce, whatever it is, and, it's about the experience of growing up in Center Grove. So,
The consistency is also important given the shift in demographics. So we are remaining consistent as subgroups of students have increased over time. But to your point then, how do we grow them more so that we have greater numbers of students passing? I can tell you with our iRead data, just real quickly, that our English as a second language students or ELL learners are doing well. We're not seeing that same growth in iRead data with our special education subgroup. So I know that those are conversations that we're having right now.
And I'm not discounting scores.
Absolutely,
Because we have to have some metric, we have to have some
absolutely.
measuring.
It's accountability.
But we have to also remember that we're about more than just the score. We're about the
Absolutely.
experience. There's some
Absolutely.
kids that are never gonna do that, but we still have to figure out a way to get those kids ready
Mhm.
to leave here and have a successful life, so whatever they do.
I had one of those, terrible test taker.
Yep.
He went to college for 2 years, wasn't bad, just wasn't for him, and
Mhm.
is succeeding in life. I wish that there, maybe was something else for him. in
I
his-
do think as we look at success criteria, it will be important to not only look at these standardized measures of scores, but what are some other key performance indicators? When we talk about the whole experience of an education here in Center Grove, how else can we track that? That gives some sort of data over time that speaks to the experiences of our students as well.
Yeah.
I have one of those students as well.
Yep.
Mhm.
Not that we're not challenging, you still move.
Absolutely, totally understood.
I don't wanna,
Challenge is still there, yeah.
I understood it for what it was. Thank you.
thank you. You can't go as far up as Southwest though.
That's right. We'll be very suspect of that. We're gonna work on it.
Okay, up next, we have public comment. We do have one, Charity Flores. And we just ask that you state your name and your address, group affiliation, if any, and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
I'm Dr. Charity Flores, and my address you need? Okay, 2927 Coventry Lane in Greenwood. Good evening, Board. I'm Dr. Charity Flores, parent of 2 Center Grove sons, an educator and researcher. I have comments about 2 topics this evening, student performance and the employability skills survey. In regards to iLearn data, as you were all just speaking about, I am concerned that specific student populations are unfortunately slipping through the cracks and not receiving the targeted conversations about support that are needed. For example, when looking at Center Grove's recent 2024 data that's publicly available, only 23% of special education students are proficient in math. For ELA, this is even more dire. Only 17.6% of students are passing. Let me say again, 17.6% of special education students are passing, compared with 66% of their general education peers. This should be an alarm and a call to action, a time to reflect and ask what we can do better to support our students and educators serving them. We cannot be silent and accept that this is okay. I've also heard anecdotal stories from community members about the lack of supports and challenges with due process for some of this student population. These students are part of our Center Grove family, and I feel that they cannot be left behind. Secondly, as a researcher, it is not clear the purpose and use of the employability skills survey. Student surveys have been a volatile topic in our community, where several families opt out and some go so far as to remove their children from Center Grove based on some stories that I've received. In recent conversations, employability skills and SEL are sometimes used interchangeably, but SEL is a small portion of the grand scheme of those employability standards. Parents should clearly understand how student data will be used and protected from these surveys. The key principle in research is ultimately to do no harm. I welcome the board to thoughtfully consider the breadth of all of the employability standards and the protocol for research and next steps prior to approval. Previous information from the Attorney General's office cited discrepancies about prior survey use and some students being singled out. Also remember, if fewer students participate, then reliability of that data is also impacted. And if the content doesn't reflect all of the standards, then validity of that measurement tool is also impacted. Any activity for a student should be a valuable use of their time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Up next, we have consent items. Does anybody have any comment or discussion with any of the consent items on the agenda? No? Do I have a motion?
Madam President, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next up, I believe, is it? Yep. Christy Berger is going to talk about the employability survey.
All right, good evening. We've been together a long time. So I am here today to ask for what? I know nothing is what you're saying. I know nothing of your past experience.
When I was president last, I could have been
Oh, okay. Appreciate that. It's been a busy day.
Yeah, I
Like it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Well, I'm here today to request the approval of the employability skills assessment surveys for all of our students in grades K through 12. We did this last school year. We had Shift. Previously, we used Panorama, which was a company that was some concerns with our community, so we switched to keep that internally. We use a Google document for our students in grades 3 through 12. And in K2, our teachers do that assessment, but we use this for a variety of things, and I think some of the information that was shared tonight is a perfect example why. Dr. Long talking about our discipline and our attendance data. That is one data point that our team uses when looking at the supports that we're providing for our students. Dr. Summer sharing about the soft skills, the employability skills that are lacking, that our workforce and business partners are asking us for, in addition to the GPS dashboard, and knowing that on that there are several employability skills that we are to teach, but within the GPS, specifically communication, collaboration, and work ethic, and those are all a part of the questions that we ask our students. This is one opportunity that our students in grades 3 through 12 have student voice, so we can guess how they're feeling, we can guess if they're mastering these skills or not, but we don't know until we ask them. So this is one of those data points that we do have. We do allow an opt-out, so looking futuristically, we will send a message to all of our families in August, at the end of August, saying there's an opportunity to opt out. Here are the questions that we'll show in a second. And if you would like to opt your child out, please let us know. When we used Panorama, that was around 400 to 500 students, and that has dropped to under 100 since we've used our internal document. So I think families felt a little bit more safe with that data. So you can see here, Tracy will pull up the different questions that are asked. So again, K2, this is the teachers will assess on these 3 questions. And so this really ties into what we were talking about, aggressive behavior, that defiance, really being able to support. So where is your student in the fall? What are the supports that the counseling team, our teachers, our assistant principals, our deans can provide to support? We know that our students need to be able to regulate their emotions before they can learn and develop those employability skills. The only change to this was teacher feedback. Last year, we had the rating scale that 80% of the time, 50% of the time, and 20% of the time, and they wanted us to add 60 and 40. They felt like 50 to 80 was a big jump, and so they really wanted to make sure that they were looking at that appropriately. In grades 3 through 5, they do that during the SEL special rotation, so it's during that time with their SEL counselor. We ask the questions below that really focus in on regulation and peer connection. Middle schools is a bit lengthier. We do this during homeroom or connect, and that's because it ties specifically to our employability skills curriculum that we use called Reallyville that was approved a couple years ago. And we have crosswalked all of these questions to the employability skills that it supports. So that's an internal document that our team uses to make sure when we're looking at this data, if we're slow or if we're low in the area of 7th grade and collaboration, what lessons can our counselors come in and provide to all students to support that? And then high school isn't as lengthy, but is a little bit longer, obviously, than elementary, and they answer those questions as well. Again, we allow that opportunity for opt-out for families who do not want to participate. And the ways that we use this data, we use it as a tier 1 kind of, what I'm trying to say, school-wide supports. And so some data from last year that I can give you some examples was for students in grades 3 through 5, one of the questions is I can use strategies to calm down when I'm upset, which ties into a lot of the things that Dr. Long was sharing. 34% of our students said no, that they can't do that. And so we looked at that data as a counseling team. We were intentional which grade levels. Was it 3rd grade? Was it 5th grade? We went in, presented some additional lessons, and when we did that again in the spring, we saw that that dropped to 32%. So 2% doesn't sound like a huge jump, but that's about 50 kids, so that is improvement for our counseling team. Middle school, with using the Reallyville curriculum in the fall, they were asked, I know how to regulate my emotions, and 61% said that they could in the fall. In the spring, 63% said that they could, so that's great. 14% in the fall said they could not, and in the spring, 12% said that they could not. So again, we saw some improvement. But one of the things that I think is our highlights is when, for high school, when you get upset, do you use a healthy coping strategy? So we know that we have seen an increase in substance use, we've seen an increase in aggression and violence towards other, and we, at the beginning of the year, 23% of our students did not know healthy coping strategies, so then our counseling team through STAR provides some opportunities to learn different coping strategies, and we saw that drop to 20%. So that's kind of our tier 1, that's how we use that information. We'll also use that information, whatever the diplomas show, how we need to show those specific skills. But deeper than that, just like academics, for our students who are not on track, the counseling team, the principal, and parents, if we see any kids that are not on track, we look to see what kind of interventions they might need from our counseling team. We get parent permission to do that. So that might be one-on-one, that might be small groups, that might be some reteaching, but that really helps us to provide our instruction to them around data. So that's all I have. Any questions for the surveys?
This may seem like a simplistic thing, and you did mention it 2 or 3 times, but we did have an issue with parents who opted out, but yet students still got surveys. How are we assuring that the teachers will know who not to pass out?
So that was the fall of my first year, 3 years ago.
And are these surveys online, or is it a piece of paper?
Sure. So that happened the fall of my first year back 3 years ago. We've not had that incident since. But we, for the elementary, the lists are given to the SEL teachers now that give the survey to students, so they know which students not to take. They have a post-it on their Chromebook that says, play a game or do something else, so that they're not isolated from not doing it.
That was going to be my next one, is how do we not shun the students not taking it?
And it's the same at middle and high school. And then for our K2 students, those teachers fill that out on what are called our PLC sheets. And I go in and remove those kids' names from that list, so they don't even have that kid to give those questions for.
Okay.
Thanks for asking.
Responses are given the privacy aids. Tell us how we use the data.
I'm sorry.
Tell me about the privacy of what we do to secure the data that we get.
Right, so that is held through our Google, and the people that have access to that is your principal, assistant principal, and counselors. And then obviously the K2 teachers, they fill that out on their PLC sheet, so that's secured for them. We have had several parents that have said, hey, I'd love to know what my kid responses were or how can I support them. So then obviously we have shared that. Anytime they reach out, we can provide that for them. In addition, yeah, of course. In addition, if we're gonna provide some additional support, like a tier 2 or tier 3 support, we're calling home to say, hey, this is what showed up, these are the options we have, would you like a small group, would you like one-on-one, or would you not like your child to participate? And so we share that information at that time. So, good questions.
My observation on this is first year was
Not great.
the word disaster, painful.
Any other
Thank you.
comments? Thank you. I know.
Okay, just making sure.
All right, any other discussion? No? All right, do I have a motion?
Madam President, I move that we approve the employability skills survey as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Do I have a second?
second it.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. The announcements, we have Labor Day no school, September 2nd. Our next executive session board meeting and Good for the Grove is September 19th, so we have to encourage some folks to come and talk to us on September 19th. Other than that, Jack, do you have any ending comments?
Just a few. Just want to remind everybody of the ISBA Fall Conference, September 23rd and 24th. If at all you could attend, it would be greatly appreciated. It is the 75th year for ISBA, but I don't know what it is for conference. And we have a big name, what it's called. But they're always good to go to. And as I've said before, you get more out of talking to other board members in the hallway sometimes than you do the seminars, which is a good thing, you know. So if you could make it at all, that would be appreciated. Alumni and friends packed up yearbooks yesterday from, I was told, 1980 through 2020.